Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's virtual information session on the primary years programme here at Raha International School. My name is Vanessa Keenan, and I'm a PYP coordinator at the school, and I'm going to be joined this morning by my colleague Rachel Harlan, who is also a PYP coordinator. This morning we're hoping to take you through the curriculum and to let you find out a little bit more about how we implement the primary years programme here at Raha International School. I'd like to begin just by explaining a little bit about the programme itself. The IB runs 3 programmes, and here at the school we have all of the 3 programmes as a continuum. The primary years programme, the middle years programme and the diploma programme. Now the primary years programme is actually a framework as opposed to a curriculum, and what that means is that we can actually take information from other types of curriculum so that we can inform our best practices of what we do here at the school. You'll notice in the very center of this curriculum framework there is a small picture of the student, because at the heart of all of the programs the student is the central focus, and it is about what the students are going to learn and what they're going to achieve. So putting the student at the center of what we do is very, very important. As we go out through the rings of the programme itself and through the framework, you will notice some things like the traditional subject areas, maths, social science, language, physical education, and so on. And you will also notice on the second most outer layer some big thematic concepts, sharing the planet, where we are in place and time, and so on. And we will go through a little bit more detail of what each of these areas of the framework means. I'm going to hand over now to my colleague, Rachel Harlan.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to have a look at how the IB may look different to other curricula. So it might feel very different to when you or I grew up and went to school, but the IB integrates technology and inquiry-based learning to prepare learners for something what we call global citizens. One big difference for parents, staff and students when moving to the IB is some of the language and terminology that is used. So I'm going to go through a little bit of that today and talk about how it compares with other curricula or the schooling system that you are familiar with. So the IB looks at conceptual understanding and knowledge and skills. Now when we compare it to other curriculums, it may just be focused on knowledge and skills. To break down the term conceptual understanding, it means that we know more than just isolated facts and methods. So the concepts might be broad, abstract, timeless and universal. So some examples of concepts are things like diversity, identity, systems and change. And these concepts help students to build an understanding across, between and beyond subjects. Other curriculums may focus more on knowledge and skills. So an example of a concept in maths, I know when I grew up, I learned lots about column addition or subtraction, and we learned quick tricks for maths to solve problems, but we may not have the conceptual understanding to apply this knowledge in other ways. When we think about inquiry-based, what is inquiry-based learning? To put it very, very simply, in the early years, students will explore these concepts through play, problem solving and collaboration. And in the primary school, it looks like flexible learning spaces. So the students will have the option to choose where they might sit. So it might be lower tables, high chairs, all sorts of places. They will also be asking lots of questions to drive their own learning, and they'll be collaborating with other students. In the IB, we call our units transdisciplinary, and I will look at this a little bit later on about what that means in our school. In other curricula, you might hear us interdisciplinary, where subjects are working in conjunction with each other, but we look at it a little bit deeper. And as Vanessa mentioned earlier, the learner profile is the center of the IB and it underpins everything that we do. And other curricula you might hear of character education, morals and values. Another terminology that we use in the IB is action. So action is considered an application of learning and an opportunity for students to engage, to form a contribution or service. And I will give you some more examples of that later. We're aware that it is lots of terminology, but as we go through our slides this morning, we will try and give some examples. We also have the approaches to learning. So these are skills that help to prepare our students for an ever-changing world. And you might hear skills like these: 21st century learning and other curricula. We also have a really big focus on agency. So this is where students are empowered to have voice, choice, and ownership in their learning. And then at the last part of this slide, we look at learning in local and global contexts, and we used case studies to allow for our students to become global citizens. And something that might be a little bit different to other curricula is there may be more of a national curriculum or world history focus. I will pass it over to Vanessa, who will continue to explore the difference between concepts and topics.
Thank you, Rachel. So just to understand a little bit more about concepts and how they relate to our curriculum, and particularly in comparison maybe to other curricula. So traditionally, as Rachel mentioned, when we were at school, perhaps we learned lots of facts. We had to memorize things. There was lots of knowledge. There were lots of topics that we had to find out about, or we had to learn a particular skill or a strategy, such as an addition strategy in mathematics. And really what PYP does is it takes the learning deeper. And the reason is because the learning that happens conceptually is learning that sticks and it stays with you. I'm sure many of you have forgotten lots of the things, lots of the facts and the topics, and maybe even some of the skills or strategies that you learned in school. But the ones where you had very deep understanding are the ones that stick. And that is why we look at the concepts that are related to those facts, topics, or skills or strategies. And they allow us, and they allow our students, more importantly, to come up with generalizations, or what we call in the PYP a central idea. And that is a big understanding of two or more concepts that are put together. And I think, as Rachel also mentioned, they're timeless and they are universal. So these are important concepts for students all over the world to learn, which really makes our curriculum a truly international curriculum. Okay, Rachel, back over to you again.
In the PYP, so as Vanessa mentioned, we explore concepts and they come under 6 different transdisciplinary themes. And you will see on the slide here, we have who we are, where we are in place and time, how we express ourselves, how we organize ourselves, how the world works, and sharing the planet. So, for example, students might inquire into concepts like sustainability or how to care for the environment, and that would come under sharing the planet. If we are looking at ancient civilizations, that would come under where we are in place and time. We might explore body systems and who we are, communication and how we express ourselves, teamwork or production and how we organize ourselves, or forces and how the world works. And as we move through the PYP, we build on different skills and the concepts change as we go along. These units allow for learning that happens that's based off the students' needs and interests. And as you will have seen, some of the units might have more of a historical context, and some may lean more towards scientific concepts and skills. On the next slide, I will talk through an example of grade 3 this year. And I would love you to have a look to see if you can look at how many different subject areas, skills and concepts are woven into our unit. And this is what we really mean by transdisciplinary learning. We see learning happening across a range of concepts and areas. So I will just give you a few seconds to read that, and then I will continue to talk through that. So as you might see, as you're looking through, we have woven in the scientific method where students will question, observe, research, hypothesize, test. They will use their math skills, so bar graphs, single line graphs. They have to find research questions and data that relates to it. They will need to select the appropriate tools. So you can see that they are getting a really, really deep understanding of our concepts that we're focused on for how the world works. This was a unit around forces, and the students were able to explore. They were able to use their math, their science, and their language skills to develop themselves as a learner. And you'll see in the pictures to the right, I've got students who are exploring forces. They were looking at the way the push and pull happens when we use our windmills. So what we aim to do next year is we would love to share a unit overview like this so that you can see what is happening in the class as well. Vanessa will now talk a little bit about transitioning in and out of the IB.
Thank you, Rachel. So we had several questions that came into us before the webinar this morning, and there are some very common questions that we noticed here at the school from all of our parents, and they relate mostly to students who are transitioning into the IB or students who are returning perhaps to a home country or moving on to another country and maybe transitioning out of the IB system. So one of the things that is probably most unusual for the students when they first join the school is the new terminology that they will get used to. However, what I would say about that is because as a staff and as a community, we are using the language of the IB all the time. So we're talking about concepts, we're talking about words like the learner profile, and we're talking about things like agency with our students. They actually begin to learn those words very, very quickly, and it doesn't become a problem for them at all. Another area where you may notice that students might need to look at things a little bit differently is around responsibility and independence. So an important part of the IB is about developing students who are responsible and who care about their community and about the world more generally. We look forward to developing global citizens. So there is a big focus on independence and responsibility, which students might not be used to if they've come from a school where they're given a lot of information, maybe just to memorize or just to retain and then produce in an exam situation. Another area of interest in the transitioning into the IB is this sense of connecting to the local and the global, and Rachel also mentioned this a little bit earlier on. So when they're researching a unit and they're finding out new things about a particular unit, they will start with the local. In fact, actually before that, they will start with themselves and see how they connect to the unit and what their interests are and motivation for learning about the unit. But they will then also start to widen their research into the local community or maybe the country where they're living, and then developing that further into global research. So how they're learning about, what they're learning about is impacted in the rest of the world. It is a very self-directed curriculum, so students are expected to take action at the end of a unit. Sometimes, particularly with the younger children, what you will find is that the action doesn't happen straight away. It might happen a few months later, and it could be in the form of a student changing their attitude about something, or it could be an activity that they want to do to make a change in their environment, whether that's the local or the global environment. Now, for students who are with us and may be transitioning out of the IB, and they may spend only a couple of years here at our school, some things that are of concern to parents are particularly how will my child cope with returning to their home country, and will they be at the similar standard to the students in their home countries. So I can let you rest assured there, because our learning outcomes have been aligned to several different curricula around the world. So we have taken our outcomes from Common Core in America, from the British National Curriculum, and from some of the New Zealand and Australian state standards, and that's in different subject areas. So we've done a complete alignment to make sure that our students are never learning anything lower than any of those other countries. And we've done quite a lot of work over the years in ensuring that that happens, so that we provide the best learning for our students, knowing that they may need to move on at some stage. Another thing that you'll probably notice if your child is transitioning out of the IB is that they do have this greater sense of independence and agency, and they have actual learning skills. So I'm not talking here about skills about a subject area, but actually learning to learn. So research skills, thinking skills, communication skills, social skills, and so on. And these are, as Rachel correctly pointed out, sometimes referred to as 21st century skills in other curricula. And it is something that the IB has driven for quite a long time. They were at the forefront of driving those learning skills. Another area is the students will have developed attributes of the learner profile, and I'll touch on that in a moment in a couple of slides' time. And the idea behind this really is to ensure that students have the qualities needed to take action and to be internationally minded and global citizens. And that's the final element there to that slide. Okay, Rachel, I'm going to hand back over again to you.
Great, thank you, Vanessa. So as we mentioned earlier, the PYP ensures that learning is really engaging for our students, it's relevant, it's challenging and significant to our local and global context, as we've mentioned. So the approaches to learning are a set of skills that are used when learning, and they come grouped in 5 sets that you'll see here on the slide. So we've got the social skills, research, thinking, communication, and self-management skills. And teachers will very skillfully plan learning opportunities for students to explore and use these skills throughout some of the units of inquiry. And you'll see in the pictures here, I can see students are using their research skills, they're collaborating together, they might be talking about their learning, they're using the iPads and books, a range of technologies to help gain a better understanding of a concept. And you'll see in the top right, students are applying their knowledge and showing their thinking skills. We were learning about time and elapsed time and how to use a clock. So they were showing their knowledge through their thinking skills. So you'll see that a lot of the approaches to learning, as we call them, might be relevant in more than one learning opportunity. And I'll pass back to Vanessa, who will look at the learner profile in action.
Thank you, Rachel. And so also we have this learner profile, and what you could say really is that the learner profile and the attributes which students display is in fact the PYP in action. This is what we're looking forward to, developing students who have all of these attributes. I always like to ask parents the question, if you look at that list of attributes there, which ones do you think you are particularly good at? And which ones do you think you, as an adult, would like to develop? Maybe you'd like to be a better communicator. Maybe you'd like to try and be a little bit more balanced. I think we all would, particularly after this COVID pandemic, trying to get out more, having exercise and healthy diets and so on. And also for your child, which ones do you think your child naturally does very well, and which ones do you think you'd like them to become better at doing? Would you like your child to be a little bit more open-minded, perhaps, when they're trying to find new friends? Or would you like them to be thinkers and to think deeply about an issue that is of significance to you or to your family? So this all leads to, as I mentioned, our students becoming internationally minded global citizens, and it really does underpin everything that we do. So every single unit will have a focus on these particular attributes of the learner profile. And again, you can see several pictures of the students there engaging in different ways. And there's a student there who's thinking about solving that mathematics problem. You have a child who's trying to balance and being a risk taker, and also inquiring to find out how she can balance on those boxes on the crate. And students who are sharing their learning through the little whiteboard there. We have that girl who's sharing her writing, which is just fantastic to see at that age. Okay, thank you, Rachel. Over to you again.
Great. So as we've talked about the results of the learning through the units of inquiry, we think about action. And as Vanessa said, it might be something that happens a little bit later on. It might be a conversation. And these different types of action, they don't have to be huge acts of service, but students might choose to create a poster, a video, a photo collage, or infographic to create awareness for others. Or they might choose to create a game, invent something, build a model, or propose a change in response to their new learning. And it might be that at home they're starting to have different conversations with you. action can look very different and will be student driven. So you will be able to encourage your child to talk about their learning at school, what is happening, maybe how their thoughts have changed. Be a really nice way to engage with their learning. And Vanessa is going to touch on a few more ways that you can support your child before they transition to the IB or as they are moving through the PYP program.
Thanks, Rachel. So there's lots of ways that you can help, and at the school we really actively encourage parents to become involved. We do have a parent team who's very, very active at the school, and so if you want, you can join that in a formal way. But there are lots of other informal ways that you can help too, and you can get involved and engage with the learning. And one of them is around case studies. So when we start a unit, we try to look at very specific examples of the elements of the unit, and it might be that we're looking at people who provide services to others. So, for example, if we have a parent who's a nurse, we might ask them to come in and talk about their job. Or maybe if you're a lawyer, you'd like to talk about what it is that you do on a day-to-day basis. So you can become involved by volunteering to come and be a case study for one of our students and find out more about what you do. Or it doesn't even have to be your work, your line of work. It could be something that you're just interested in, a hobby that you have, or something that you're particularly knowledgeable about, and you'd like to share that with the class and with the teacher. Another great way to help is reading in the mother tongue. We have, I think at the last count, it was over 70 nationalities at the school, and something like around 50 different mother tongues that are spoken by our students. So that's a wealth of information and knowledge that we can tap into and access. And it's very, very helpful if you're able to read either at home, or again, you could volunteer to come into the school and read to the class in your mother tongue. And our kids absolutely love hearing different languages. It's very exciting for them. Again, coming back to the learner profile, so now that you know what those attributes of the learner profile are, you can support them, whether it's being caring or thinking or knowledgeable, and trying to use that language with the students at home. Questioning is a really important part of what we do. The inquiry drives all of the units that we teach here at the school. So I would encourage you to ask lots of questions of your child at home, and we'd be happy to share examples of that with you in our frequently asked questions at the end of this webinar as well, to help you start thinking about what kind of questions you could ask your child. Supporting the student-initiated action. So as Rachel said, sometimes the action might be something quite big, but also it could be very subtle things, and it could be even just something like a change of attitude for a student. What's important is that you try to encourage them to do that. So if your child is coming home and asking you to make, they want to make a model of something, maybe they need to go and get some supplies to do that, or need some help sticking boxes and various things together, or make their poster. If you can support that in any way, that would be really practical and helpful for them. And of course, generally discussing the units of inquiry that we study with the students and trying to make connections at home. We have a lot of units that talk about who we are and the connection to the home country as well. So it's very helpful when you are able to discuss that and make connections with wherever it is that you might come from if you are not here from the UAE here. Okay. I'm just going to finish off by mentioning that we did receive, as I said, quite a few questions. Some of them are more logistical questions about the admission process. And for those questions, I would just refer you to the admissions admin email address. It's here on the screen, or you could obviously call the school. Another way to find out about those more logistical questions are through the website itself. So there is an admissions area, and there's also a parents area on the website, which you can dip into and find out a little bit more about the curriculum and other questions that you may have. Rachel, is there anything in the chat that you would like to raise, any questions that parents might have brought up this morning before we close?
Vanessa, I've got two questions here. How can I best prepare my child for joining the PYP, and do you report to parents?
Okay, so in terms of preparing the students, sometimes I think it's more about parents actually getting prepared and understanding the system that we use here. So by you even coming to this session this morning, you've already started on the journey. You're familiarizing yourself with the terminology that we use, and you're beginning to find out about the way we teach and what we do here at the school. And talking to your child about that is important. So, you know, if you start to introduce some of this language to them, that can be helpful. Another thing that is particularly helpful with younger children, if they are not native speakers of English, or if they do have a second language at home, you might also like to translate some of the terminology that we use in the school to help them a little bit better with the adjustment. And just discussing with the child about their hopes and expectations and the things that they would like to achieve by coming to school is really, really important. And the second question was on reporting, is that right, Rachel?
Yes. Do you report to parents?
So we do. There's different formats of reporting in a PYP school. So there are formal written reports that currently go out twice per year, mid-year and end of year. But there are also other ways that we report to the parents, such as settling in meetings at the beginning of the year. And we have student conferences as well, where the students take a lot more ownership in the meeting. So we have three-way conferences that happen with you and with the teacher and with the child. And also, in those ones we set the goals with the students, and then we have student-led conferences towards the end of the year, and in those ones particularly the students take over the entire meeting and they guide you through the process of what they have learned throughout the year. And so that is something that is quite unique about a PYP school as well. And we have just this year trialed doing that online, so that's been very exciting, seeing a new version of what the three-way conferences look like. And of course, then there's informal reporting as well, the conversations that you might have with the teachers at the door at the end of the day, or any feedback on our digital platform, which is called Toddle app. And when the students post work, we'll get feedback from the teachers who will respond to the work and may set next steps for the student in their learning. So there's lots of ways that we report back to you. It's not just one set of formal reports.
Vanessa, I've just had a couple of questions come through, if you don't mind. Is the PYP program suitable for all children?
That's a great question. And it absolutely is, because it is an inclusive practice that we use, which is inquiry, and questioning is something that every child has at their heart. I mean, you see young children all the time, they naturally have lots of questions, they wonder about everything, and in terms of the actual learning and the levels of challenge that we have for the students, we ensure that we make sure that every child reaches their potential and is challenged in a way according to their level as well. So that is done through the planning with the teachers, and in some cases it's with the inclusion team as well, depending on the child's needs. But it absolutely is a curriculum for everyone.
And then I've got, since the IB system is student tailored, how does it guarantee that a student tries things that take them out of their comfort zone?
Great question. So again, this partly comes back to planning with the teachers and setting goals with the students. So it's a constant dialogue between the teachers and the students to ensure that they are reaching capacity. And I think one thing that all teachers will tell you is that they know their students really well, and sometimes they might even know them better than the parents themselves, because they are spending so much time with them. And we know when the students are, you know, trying and putting an effort in, and we know when they're just maybe not putting quite so much effort. So teachers work really closely with the students to ensure that they have very specific learning goals and that they know what the next steps of learning are, but more importantly, that they know how to reach them. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, some great questions coming through. Maybe we could do two more, and then we can follow up with some of the others. We've got, how well does PYP translate to online learning?
That's a very good question. Obviously, for the whole world, I think we've all had things turned upside down this year. One thing I would say is that it's not a cut and paste approach to the online learning. We do still have the students inquire in different ways, but it is not just live lessons online all day long. The research shows that is not the best practice for students to be sitting in front of a device for the whole day. So there's a combination of online tasks and screen-free time, and a task that they may have to do without the device but later upload. So it is possible for the PYP to be delivered online. It is an unusual way to do it, as we've all seen this year, but it absolutely is possible, yes.
And how do you guarantee a smooth transition from EY to PYP?
Okay, that's great. I'm just going to point out something about the question there. So EY is in fact also part of PYP. The PYP runs for students from 3 years old up to 12. So our whole early years and primary program is under the umbrella of the PYP. So that would be the first point, that it is all under one. And we have, depending on the branch, I think in Khalifa City in particular, there are teachers who are moving up with students this year, so that there's some crossover between the grades, which will help the students to adjust. But also teachers would plan vertically, so we ensure that there is an alignment in the curriculum for the students. And obviously teachers see the reports and the information about the students from the previous year. We have things like transition days for the students so that they're ready to move up, and a lot goes into the planning around that.
And the final question, Vanessa, do you plan to blend newcomers with other students, or do you group all newcomers in one class?
No, we always mix our students up. We don't just put all of the newbies in one class, and I think it's important for them to feel fully part of the community. So, you know, if 2 children happen to join, it would be rare that they would just be put in the same class, although, you know, it might happen, but we would tend not to do that. We would like to spread any of the new admissions across the grade so that they get to meet lots of new people, and also for the students who are currently here, that they all get opportunities to meet our new friends and our new family members.
Thank you, Vanessa. We had lots of great questions coming in. They are all the ones that I can see now, but if any more come through, we will send up a follow-up email to help answer any of those frequently asked questions. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thanks. Yes, we're expecting within the next couple of days to just collate all the questions that you have sent in, and particularly ones that maybe were not addressed today, and hopefully you will be able to find your answers in that frequently asked question template that will be sent out to you shortly by email. Thank you all very much for attending today, and we look forward to seeing you in September.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.